If you're an educator right now, you are. You're navigating what has to be the most demanding, always-on professional landscape in history.
Oh, absolutely.
The classroom has just fundamentally changed. I mean, it's not confined to four walls anymore, right? It lives in your learning management system, your parent communication apps, your email inbox.
It's relentless. And frankly, for a lot of people, it lives right there in the nightstand.
Exactly.
And that expansion is, it's fantastic for accessibility, but it's also prime territory for information overload, for fatigue. It's a fast track to burnout. The data we looked at confirms this. The digital demands on educators today are they're immense. And the line between engagement and sheer exhaustion has never been thinner.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is a true deep dive. We've gone through a ton of source material on self-care and digital resilience, and we've distilled the absolute most crucial, actionable strategies, specifically for you, the educator.
And we're not just summarizing here.
No, we are looking for those aha moments that help you build what we're calling a robust digital immune system.
Right. The goal for you, listening, is to absorb these strategies so you can have a healthy, balanced relationship with technology, so you can thrive, not just survive the school year.
Right.
This is about building an infrastructure for yourself, not about just giving up technology. We're moving beyond generic advice to what this looks like in a high-demand job.
Okay, let's jump right into the first pair of strategies then. These deal with structure, with control. We have to start with setting clear boundaries, the when of it all.
This is the absolute cornerstone of your digital immune system.
Yeah.
I mean, if the digital world is always open, you have to be the one who decides when it's closed.
You install the closing time.
Exactly. And for an educator, this isn't just about, turning off your phone. It's about navigating that constant expectation that you're available across email, grading portals, parent messaging apps.
At all hours.
At all hours.
That is the friction point. The source material is very direct on this. You have to establish and rigorously maintain boundaries between work and personal life. So that means designating specific times for checking emails, for doing work-related tasks. But here's the key part, the deep dive nugget. You have to communicate this boundary proactively.
Yes, that's it. We're not just talking about a little rule you have for yourself.
Yeah.
If you only check email between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., you need an out-of-office message. You need a standard reply on those apps that clearly states your response window.
Because you're managing expectations.
You're managing expectations. That is a massive step in preventing burnout. If parents or students know they won't hear back until the next workday, that anxiety from a 7 p.m. notification it dissipates.
It shifts the burden.
It shifts the burden from you to the system you've created.
That communication is the shield. Okay, so once we set the when, the source material forces us to address the how, and that's the strategy of mindful technology use.
Right.
When you are on your device, are you being intentional? Or are you just platform switching and falling into that cognitive overload trap?
And what's fascinating is how the sources link multitasking directly to educator fatigue. We feel productive, right? Bouncing between grading software, a colleague's chat, a slide deck.
Oh, for sure. It feels like you're getting so much done.
But you're not. It actually degrades the quality of your work, and it accelerates the cognitive load. Your mind has this thing called attention residue. When you switch tasks quickly, you're constantly leaving little bits of your focus behind.
So the actionable advice here is focus on one digital task at a time, fiercely. Did the sources give any concrete frameworks for this?
They did, yeah. They really encourage using time management frameworks, so things like the Pomodoro method for deep work, or just time boxing your tasks.
Okay.
You dedicate, say, 25 minutes specifically to grading. And during that time, you use your device's built-in tools like focus mode on an iPhone or on Windows. You use it to block all the incoming notifications from everything else. You use the tech to enforce your focus.
And the breaks. You have to take regular, scheduled breaks to rest your eyes, rest your mind. I love the technical recommendation here.
Yeah.
Setting up apps that track your screen time and actually prompt you to stand up or look away.
It's using technology as your own boundary guardian.
A little digital irony there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that mindful, disciplined approach ensures that when you are engaged digitally, you're maximizing that time. You're not just surviving it.
Okay, so moving beyond structure, let's talk about balance. The digital world is all about connection. but we need meaningful disconnection to replenish. This brings us to cultivating offline hobbies.
And this isn't just, fluffy self-help talk. There's a real cognitive reason this is critical for educators.
Right.
If your professional life is so heavily digital, you're reading on screens, you're interacting via chat, planning with software, your brain needs a respite. It needs to engage different neural pathways.
That's the deep dive insight right there. It's not just about relaxing, it's about stimulating a different part of your brain.
Totally.
The source material gives some great tangible examples. Reading a physical book, practicing a musical instrument, a creative hobby like painting.
Something tactile, something manual,
Yeah.
dedicating time to these non-digital pursuits.
Mhm.
It creates a genuine circuit break. You're forcing your brain out of that rapid response mode that the digital world demands.
Yeah.
And these are the activities that fuel the long-term creativity and patience you need in the classroom.
And that respite feeds right into the next point, fostering meaningful connections. We have all this digital convenience, but we need real human depth.
Absolutely. Digital communication is incredibly convenient for quick logistics, right? Don't forget the permission slip. But it often lacks the emotional nuance that you need to build a true support network. In a high-stress world of education, that support network is your professional lifeline.
So this means prioritizing face-to-face interactions, actively cultivating relationships with colleagues, friends, family. I hear this sometimes, though. I talk to my colleagues all day on Slack. Isn't that connection?
It is a connection, but the sources make a strong distinction. Digital chat is great for quick problem solving, but it really struggles to nurture that deep sense of belonging and support that comes from sharing a laugh in person, from reading body language.
Or just having an unfiltered conversation.
Exactly, a non-recorded conversation. Those deep connections are what sustain you when you hit those inevitable professional rough patches.
Okay, so we've built the boundaries, we've scheduled the unplugged time. Now we have to shift focus to making the digital environment itself a supportive place, not a source of stress. This is about curating and decluttering the digital environment.
Think of this as information hygiene. If the boundaries are the skin of your immune system, then curating your feed is about filtering what you ingest digitally.
I like that analogy.
So the first step is creating a supportive digital environment.
And this is really challenging for educators because so many professional growth tools like X or specialized Facebook groups can be inspiring and incredibly toxic at the same time.
You see amazing projects, but you also see endless comparison, competition, complaints.
So much complaining.
Yes. So the actionable advice is follow accounts and engage with content that genuinely uplifts and motivates you. But here's the critical, often difficult step. The necessary culling.
The digital weeding.
That's it.
Gotcha.
Don't hesitate to unfollow or mute sources that consistently leave you feeling anxious or inadequate or just angry. Even if that person's professionally relevant, if they negatively impact your well-being, the cost outweighs the benefit.
That's a huge point. But how do you, say, mute a professional group without missing essential updates?
You use the platform tools. A lot of platforms let you mute content but keep notifications for direct mentions. So you're surrounding yourself with a supportive digital community that encourages growth, but you're shielded from all the ambient noise and negativity. It's conscious control.
And that leads right into the twin strategy here. Practicing digital decluttering, true digital hygiene. We accumulate so much emails, files, apps that it becomes this invisible stress.
It creates cognitive friction. If you spend 5 minutes every single day hunting for a student file you saved in 3 different folders, that's 5 minutes of unnecessary stress every day.
The specifics from the sources are really useful here. They stress batching your actions.
Yes. Schedule a recurring, maybe quarterly digital cleanup session. Unsubscribe from all those newsletters you never read. Delete unused apps that are just cluttering your screen.
And draining your battery.
And draining your battery.
Yeah.
You streamline your digital workflows. The goal is to create a sense of order, just like a clean physical workspace. Less digital noise means less mental load, which directly impacts your energy for teaching.
Okay, we've covered structure, balance, and environment. This brings us to the final and maybe the most essential step. Prioritizing reflection and application.
Right. None of these strategies will stick if we don't look inward. Introspection is the ongoing diagnostic for your digital immune system. You have to take dedicated time to reflect on your digital habits and the actual impact they're having on your well-being.
This isn't a one-time thing.
No, it's a regular checkup, an assessment of your relationship with technology.
So how do we structure that reflection? What are the most effective tools?
The source material encourages a brief, regular digital audit. Ask yourself, does my technology use align with my personal values, with my professional goals? Am I spending 3 hours on email that could be done in 1 hour of focused work?
And the tools for that reflection are key. The sources strongly recommend journaling or mindfulness practices.
Because sometimes, just seeing the numbers written down, I spent 4 hours responding to non-urgent emails yesterday, that's all the motivation you need to enforce that 4 p.m. email cutoff.
Right.
Self-awareness is your primary shield against future burnout. It lets you recognize patterns you didn't even know were there. Like you might notice that scrolling a specific social media app before bed consistently messes up your sleep.
And once you see the pattern, you can adjust the boundary.
Exactly.
So when we connect this all back to the big picture, what does it all mean for being a thriving educator? Let's synthesize that core message.
The synthesis is clear. Digital self-care is not a niche requirement. It is a fundamental professional competency. By proactively investing in your digital well-being, by establishing and communicating boundaries, by prioritizing mindful use, by seeking offline respite, by curating and decluttering, and by reflecting, you are building sustainability.
We're building resilience.
You are. And that investment means you are better equipped emotionally, cognitively, to support your students, your colleagues, and most importantly, yourself.
Fantastic. That brings us to the end of our deep dive. So to recap quickly, we covered 7 core areas: setting and communicating boundaries,
Practicing mindful use, cultivating offline hobbies,
fostering meaningful connections, creating a supportive digital environment.
systematic digital decluttering, and prioritizing self-reflection.
That is a powerful stack of knowledge.
It is, but we both know knowledge only matters when it's actually applied.
Which leads perfectly to the final provocative thought we want to leave you with today. The sources advise reflecting on all these strategies and then choosing just 1 or 2 that resonate immediately, right now, and implementing them today.
Don't try to do it all at once.
No, don't try to install the entire digital immune system in an afternoon.
So our challenge to you is this. Identify right now, in this moment, which single strategy feels like the most urgent point of investment for you. Is it setting a hard 6 p.m. notification limit on your work device?
Is it just unsubscribing from 10 newsletters that clutter up your inbox?
Find that one small start.
Because that one minimal change, that one step towards proactive digital well-being can instantly reduce stress and create real positive momentum. Take the knowledge, take the step.
We encourage you to start building your digital immune system today.
We'll be here when you're ready for the next deep dive. Thanks for exploring with us.